We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I bought myself a new Logitech webcam, but I haven't even opened the package yet. So maybe next week the video might be slightly better. I have no idea. It might be worse for all I know. Might not work at all. It's Windows.
you should give yourself a good couple hours.
But some of your AV Rant donations have had the proceeds have gone towards Rob buying a new Logitech webcam. We'll
and I'm
see
looking
how
into
that pans
getting
out.
some headphones.
Yeah,
as well. So I am not doing that yet, but I am doing it. I just ordered a new cell phone.
Okay.
So I got the Pixel XL, and its
the 3?
battery is crapping. I'm not getting the 3.
Oh.
But I ordered the 2.
Okay.
The 3A or whatever it is.
Yeah. Isn't that the low-cost one?
That's the low-cost one,
Okay.
but it's not as low-cost. It's a little bit more expensive than a 2 on eBay. But the 2s you just have better battery life and stuff like that. And that's really all I really care about.
Apparently someone at Google just nonchalantly on Twitter said, yeah, the Pixel 4 is coming. So that's apparently
we all knew that.
It's not a shock.
No, who
the numbers keep going up every year.
It's it's like, hey, guess what? We're also going to make a PS5 someday.
That's right.
We know. We're aware.
Still haven't confirmed that's the name. Anyway.
All right. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com, leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast is a very good way to get in touch with us. I have so many mosquito bites on my ankles. It's just so bad. I'm going to complain throughout this podcast. So,
all right.
Yeah, just looking forward to that.
At least you're not coughing or sneezing yet.
Yeah, but my son, he's been sick for almost a week now.
Yeah. So next week, Tom will be back to coughing.
Well, he's not coughing or sneezing. He's fever and barfing. Okay. Mostly fever, though. YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact Rob directly. It's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. So let's thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There you will be taken to a PayPal donation site, and PayPal will take your credit card or your PayPal information and give us some monies. Mm-hmm. So we want to thank Jonathan for doing that. I just saw something move out of the corner of my eyes.
Probably a cord.
It's nothing. There's nothing over there to move.
Just a shadow.
Just a thing.
All right.
Yeah. So thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan, thank you for the donation. We appreciate that.
And we also want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com. So Patreon is a service where it's like a continuing support subscription service. A minimum of $1 a month is what you can sign up for. You can have a maximum of infinity.
That's right.
So we want to thank our 82 patrons, including Rob. We're the first thing he's ever donated to on Patreon. So thank you, Rob, and also Carlton, who has been a patron of ours since the very beginning. So thank you both of those gentlemen.
That's awesome. That's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. Thanks very much to Rob and to Carlton for being 2 of our patrons and our 80 other patrons as well. Appreciate that.
If you want to be mentioned, just email us. We'll mention
That's right.
Anthony bought the Focal Chorus. Oh, wait a second. If you can't support the podcast financially, just let us know what you did. So Anthony bought the Focal Chorus 706 bookshelf speakers from Accessories for Less that we recommended to him last week. He told them it was because of us. And by the way, his pair of PB1000 subs fits nicely in his 18 by 16 foot room. And his couch does shake a lot, so we're probably right that they're enough. We are right that they're enough because they
just an update.
Enough.
But congrats, Anthony, on that Focal bookshelf speaker purchase. I'm sure you'll enjoy them.
And Mark ordered dual PC 2000 subs from SVS and let us know it's because of our recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mark, for letting them know. And congrats on that purchase as well.
Yeah, you're going to love those. All right, in the news, this comes from Karl. NASA and Lockheed Martin are developing their X-59 I know that they came up with X things before everybody else started doing X things, but I think they should just get away from it. And plus, it sounds like a comic book plane. That whatever. Anyways, it's a supersonic jet that can supposedly break the sound barrier over land without producing a sonic boom any louder than a car door closing. To accomplish this goal, a traditional cockpit will not work, so the pilot's position has been moved back between the wings, meaning no forward visibility. Instead of a window, there will be a 4K screen being fed by a pair of cameras plus preloaded terrain data. Why even put a pilot on the thing? Why don't you just drone it?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a passenger plane. This is like looks like a one-person cockpit from the image that they shared. But
it looks like a rocket with a cockpit way at the back. That's what it looks like.
And just a couple of wings. In fact, like 4 pairs of wings. Is that what's going on?
I mean, if you count the ones that are on the tail,
that's right.
There's 8. There's two. There's 2 big ones.
4 pairs.
Yeah. 4 pairs. Yeah. There's 8 wings. Yeah.
Kind of
weird.
Yeah. But in any case, I mean, of course, the reason we're mentioning this on a AV podcast is because of the 4K screens. I mean, that's fine. 4K screens are reliable. I just hope it's not connected via HDMI. I'm sure it isn't. That's
the CEC kicks in and it goes.
Kicks in.
It cuts out every 35 seconds as it tries to reestablish its HDCP connection. All right, yeah, that's the handshake sucks, dude.
Yep.
Digital Trends posted a handy guide for limiting your Netflix data usage and bandwidth for anyone dealing with data caps, especially on for mobile devices. So
we'll have a link for that, avrant.com. We post the links for the things that we talk about. So yeah, it's just a handy guide if you're ever like, I want to not use 7 gigabits or 7 gigabytes an hour, which is, if you've got the full 4K and HDR. And I mean, you can watch Netflix in HDR on certain mobile devices, but to get that, you have to be on the 4K HDR stream, so it could be using as much as 7 gigabytes an hour, which if you're on a mobile data plan, you probably want to limit that. So a handy guide that Digital Trends posted, that's good.
And Amazon partnered up with Toshiba to release a new budget 4K TVs with Amazon Fire TV built in. And in an interesting twist, they support Dolby Vision, but not HDR10+.
So yeah, Amazon has been like the biggest supporter of HDR10+ as far as content goes.
Right, because you could stream 10+, right?
Yeah, you could stream from Amazon Prime Video in HDR10+, and that was like one of the very few places you could get HDR10+ content, but their own TVs that have Amazon Fire TV built in, they're being made by Toshiba, and Toshiba is using like other OEM things to make that. But going to have Dolby Vision in there, which Amazon Prime also does support on a very limited amount of content. But all the things that we've been seeing, like basically all the TV manufacturers that used to support HDR10+ are now supporting both that and Dolby Vision. Samsung is like the last company who's like, HDR10+ only, no Dolby Vision over here. So it just seems as though things are moving Dolby's way. That's all.
Yeah. So so there's a 43-inch, which will be $330, 50-inch, $380, 55-inch, $450. These prices are ridiculous. And so all of these will be 60 hertz screen panels, and they'll be edge lit, so no local dimming. So don't buy them.
Kind of. I mean, as pointed out, Vizio's lowest end 4K HDR capable televisions are also Dolby Vision compatible. They have, I mean, you can call it full array local dimming, although it's like 8 zones or something ridiculously small, but still a full array backlight in the back, not edge lit. It's still going to be superior, and they're actually even less expensive, like retail prices than these. Right. So, I mean, these are competitive. It's not as though they're drastically more or less capable or something like that. But it's just these aren't like the greatest prices ever. Although I'm sure, Amazon Prime days or whatever, it'll be super cheap.
Right, and they're going to get top recommendations and everything else. And
yes,
that's fine. Whatever. I saw somebody walking out of Sam's the other day with like a 65-inch Magnavox. Magnavox. I was like, they still make TVs?
They're still around.
Like I was shocked.
How Westinghouse is still out there with their TVs somehow.
Westinghouse still makes TVs?
Westinghouse, sure.
All right, some comments from listeners. Robin wanted to thank us for taking the time to discuss his corner TV setup and wanted to let us know some results after following our advice. So this is a guy, I think we talked about it for the last 2 weeks or so.
Oh, yes, yeah.
He's had that corner TV with the door that opens, and is that right? The door that opens?
Not the door that opens, no.
Not
but
the door.
Is the
this
large
fireplace.
room where we've only ever seen the view where there's an entire room this size behind the camera.
Right.
But yeah, no, this corner television setup, yeah.
All right, so we told him to move his subs. We told him to space out his speakers. We told him to do a couple other things. He put his front left to right speakers farther apart, and it really improved his imaging and panning. In fact, the improvement was so great that he no longer feels the desire to further upgrade his speakers. That can be the case. So he's keeping the Polk RTIs, cherry finished speakers, and he's much happier with their sound now. He also raised and widened his front height speakers. He played several Atmos demos and decided that even though the front heights don't always play a lot of sound, he does like what they do what they add when they do play. And he already has them mounted and wired up, so there's no reason to remove them. He's still deciding what to do on the subwoofer front. The corner TV placement is staying, no moving that, but he feels much more informed and headed in the right direction. So congratulations.
That is great. Happy to hear all of that. Not costing you any extra money, so that's exactly the type of improvements that we like.
Right. And to all the listeners out there and the people that you talk to, placement is just so underrated as how important it is. People are like, should I buy new speakers? My speakers sound like crap. I'm like, probably not.
It depends.
Probably
but...
you have them stacked on top of each other behind a book. You know what I mean? It's just, I've seen some just crazy setups where people have like this diagonal pattern, like stand, like a bookshelf stand, and they put their TV on top of it, and then they put the speakers inside. But because it's like it's got like diamond shaped little cubbies for these books to be on.
All right.
They don't, they're not
up and
they're
down.
Like,
they're tilted.
They're not. It's not just that they're tilted, but they're not in line with each other. Like the right speaker will be up high, the center speaker will be in the middle, and the left speaker will be low. And they're like, things don't sound right. I'm like, yeah, think. Yeah, so
by no means was Robin's placement crazy or anything like that, but we were just we heard what he was describing. We're like, that could probably be improved with positioning, and indeed it was. So happy
that's
to
right.
hear about that.
And how many times have it's just been like, pull your couch forward off the back wall and
very
put
often
something. Just put something fluffy back there, and people are like, oh my god, it makes such a difference. And that's what we're here for, really. It's just to point out those sorts of things that we can help you out with, so that you don't have to spend any money. That's really my goal. It's to help everybody without them having to spend any money if they don't want to. If you want to, though, we can totally help you with that. All right, some questions. David, on the Epson refurb website, they had the 5040 UB for $1150, which seemed like an excellent deal. Naturally, the 5050 is the current model and it's selling for $2,700 to $2,800. David would like to keep his budget closer to $1,500, but he wants it all. Of course you do. Well, you want low price and all the features, which isn't very common to be able to find. We'll do that way. But the P3 color, excellent black levels and contrast, true 4K resolution at $1,500, and HDR. Would either the BenQ HT3550 or the HT5550 get him closer to his goals than the 5040? Well, I'll just tell you outright that it depends on what your goals are. Like, what you have to rank these things, right?
But he's stated those things. He wants all the stuff.
I understand.
Yes.
But, in reality, though, what is the most important things to you? Is it black levels? Because one of these is going to do black levels a lot better than the other one. Is it, the wide color? Is it the 4K? Which is, you got to give us a ranking here. But anyways, we'll go on. What about the LG 4K laser model that goes for around $1,800? Didn't we just talk about that last week?
That was the ViewSonic, but they are kind of similar in terms of performance. Yeah.
And would a JVC just beat the pants off of all of these? How much more would he have to pay to get one of those?
A lot.
A lot, yeah.
A lot more.
To get all the things, you're looking at all the monies. So there's I mean, that's just reality. I mean, you can't. You always have to make compromises, and even if you say I want everything, you're like, I'm going to have the cinema quality, blah 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 blah, reference everything. Like, okay, well, you need a room that's this big and another room behind it that's this big that has its own cooling system for the massive projector we're going to be putting in there. You're like, oh, I can't do that. Well, you see, there's always compromise.
So to try and simplify this, I mean, I'll start with the 50/50 UB, which we know is more than he wants to spend.
Right.
But I'll start there because it has all the things that you described that you want, except for the price, right? And
Right.
it also is not true 4K resolution. It is, of course, a 1080p panel that they're wobbling just twice per frame, so you're getting 2 times 1080p. You are not getting true 4K resolution. But in terms of excellent black levels and contrast, it has that. In terms of full P3 color, it has that. It's bright. It has a fully motorized lens with lens memories, so that you can set it up for both CinemaScope and 16:9 if you want to do that at the push of a button. Has excellent HDR handling, and the 50/50 UB now has the one feature that was lacking from the 50/40 UB, which is the ability to show 4K at 60 frames per second with HDR. Right, the 50/40 UB had the limitation of 10.2 gigabits per second on its HDMI inputs, which meant you could do 4K 60 but not with HDR, or you could do 4K with HDR but not at 60 frames per second. You sort of had to pick one or the other with your 4K input signal, and the 50/50 corrected that. The 50/50 also gives you better and more manual control over how HDR is handled, but ultimately the 50/40 UB and the 50/50 UB are way more similar than different.
Right.
So if 4K 60 frames per second with HDR is not a huge priority for you, and really it's only gamers, right? Gamers and people for whom Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk is the ultimate movie and the only thing they ever want to watch. That's really it, because almost all 4K HDR content is at 24 frames per second. That's what movies are at, and that's not a problem for the 50/40 UB.
For all these people who have, including myself, who have HDMI cables already in walls and no way of really upgrading them, getting the projector that can do all of the things, especially the
full 18 gigabits a second,
18, you may be never able to utilize it anyways.
Right.
So that is something to consider.
All of that is to say, the 50/40 UB is a fantastic projector, and if you can get it for $1150, that is a steal of a price, and it does everything you could really ask for other than 4K 60 with HDR. Okay, so that's that. So are there any alternatives that could outdo the 50/40 UB? And the flat answer is no. Whether it's the ViewSonic or the LG that use a laser, they still don't have the black levels or the contrast that the 50/40 UB offers, and they don't have the P3 color. The BenQ HT 3550 and 5550, well, they've got a filter there that gets you closer to P3 color. It's still not as wide as the Epsons, but it's pretty close, so I won't knock them there. They do use the DLP 1080p chip that they wobble 4 times every frame, so technically you are getting full 4K resolution. Every frame you're getting all of the pixels, but it's still wobbling, and you get the halo of light around the whole image as a result of that 4 times wobbling. And then the main thing, though, is the black levels and the contrast. They just are not the equal of the ultra black Epson projectors, and that's really the thing you're going to notice the most. So my real answer here to you, David, would be snap up the 50/40 UB at the price that you can afford, as long as 4K 60 HDR is not a huge priority for you, meaning you're not a super duper into it gamer, and this is going to be your primary display for gaming.
Right. So his current 1080p BenQ projector is ceiling mounted right above his head. The fan noise isn't too bad, but is occasionally noticeable or even irritating sometimes. The Epson projectors would appear to give him much more placement flexibility. He's got a 135-inch screen, and his back wall is 19 feet from the screen. Could he use a rear shelf to mount a real shelf mount with the Epson? Could he actually put it on a shelf above one of his surround back speakers on the back wall? Oh, right, because he's got a door in the middle of his back wall, so he can't put it. He'd have to be off to the left or the right. Or should he lower his absorption panels so that his projector is... Oh, that's not a door. That's a...
Those are absorption panels that are actually in between his surround back speakers. The doorway is to the left of the surround back left.
So his surround backs are only 4 feet apart, it looks like.
They're only about 4 feet apart. That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the lens shift is on this thing, but
I mean, if it's one of the Epsons, if it's the 50/40 UB, it has tons of lens shift. 19 feet. So I mean, the 19 feet is the actual back wall from the screen. So you got to remember the lens of the projector is going to be like 1.5 feet or so, about 18 inches in front of that, which is completely fine. So a rear shelf mount for the Epson completely makes sense. It's quieter than your existing BenQ to begin with, although when you go into HDR mode, you'll probably want to use the high lamp if you really want to see HDR, which means it'll be about as loud as your current BenQ, because it's still quieter overall, but in high lamp mode, it'll be about as loud. But hey, back shelf mount will definitely help you there. Now, as far as does it have the lens shift ability to that, you leave your panels where they are and you put the shelf above, say, your surround back right speaker, you totally could, because it's got lots of horizontal lens shift and vertical lens shift. That would be no problem from being essentially 2 feet over from centered.
Right.
That'd be no problem. Basically, if you have it anywhere within the side frames of your frame, in fact, even a little bit more than that, I think it's got like a 57% of the width of your screen lens shift, so it could be like a little bit outside of the side frame. So totally fine if you want to. Aesthetically, just looking at it, you might want to center it, but there's no need to. You could totally leave things the way they are, put a shelf above your surround back right speaker, and that's where your Epson lives.
So Netflix says that if you want to watch 4K, your display needs to be able to do 4K at 60 frames per second. Isn't the Epson 5040 limited when it comes to 4K? Is Netflix 4K on the Epson not possible? Well, it doesn't do 60 frames per second, but there's no way that
it can as long as it's 4K without HDR. Right.
Oh, okay.
So it could do 4K 60 without HDR, or it could do 4K 24 with HDR. So
it should be able to convert that anyways, right? I mean, it's just
it can do it because the 4K 60 is going to be like the menus, right? But the menus aren't in HDR.
Okay.
And then when the content comes on, you just have to make sure that whatever you're using to play Netflix will switch the frame rate for you, because if it's one of the devices that keeps the frame rate locked, then you would run into the problem of, it's 4K 60 all the time, so I wouldn't be able to get HDR. What I would highly recommend is to use an Apple TV 4K. Because if you use an Apple TV 4K, you would actually set the default video output of the Apple TV 4K to be 4K SDR. That should be your default output, and you can lock the Apple TV 4K to always use 420 chroma subsampling. And if you do that, that'll help a lot. That reduces the bandwidth being used by a lot instead of it being the full 444. So set the Apple TV 4K to always be 420 chroma subsampling, set its default to be 4K SDR, and then tell it to match the frame rate and dynamic range of whatever content you're watching. And that'll kick it into HDR and 24 frames per second when it's Netflix. So the Apple TV 4K is a wonderful match to the Epson, and you totally can watch 4K HDR on the Epson with that.
So, FOMO Josh. Turns out we might actually know what we're talking about, which is really only a surprise
starting
to
to
Josh.
convince him.
not to us. Anyways, Josh got a single PC 2000 to start. It sounds so good. And placed in the middle of his front wall, it sounds pretty darn even across all of his seats, even without a second sub. This is the model we had originally said to get, not an 18-inch servo sub, which that's 1,000 questions ago. I don't even remember that. And we said to try just one at first, since his room is wide open, that the area is only in the portion, and all of that worked, and he didn't miss out yet.
He was fearful of missing out. That's why he's FOMO Josh, but he did not miss out.
Next, since his center speaker isn't here yet, he tried just using his existing bookshelf left-right speaker as with a phantom center, plus his Focal bird surrounds mounted on the ceiling. This is the setup we had told him to use all along, because he's got the big. But I thought he was changing that, so the whole room was going to be it now.
Oh no, it's about half the room now instead of a quarter of the room.
Okay, so we went from a quarter to a half. Okay,
Yeah.
Instead of a quarter to a full.
That's right.
So he's got his, just so that we all remember, he's got his stuff off in the corner on half of the room. Okay. The dialogue all sounds very clear, and he gets a great center image with no actual center speaker, which is something else we said to do.
Yep.
He hasn't even run the Audyssey yet. He's got a Denon X3500H, so it's multi-EQ XT32 with sub-EQ HT and the optional Audyssey app. What sort of improvement should he be looking for after running Audyssey? Why are you asking when you can just run the Audyssey?
No, but I mean, he's like kind of saying what should actually be the result. I mean, how do you tell if it's actually been a benefit or possibly a detriment?
I mean, you can first of all, you just listen, but I mean, Rob's going to tell you to listen to sweeps.
Yes, I am. How did you know, Tom?
God, it's only like we've been doing this podcast forever. Rob's going to tell you to listen to sweeps. I'm going to tell you to just live with it for a while and see if you notice that much of a difference. The reality is what it's going for is to making things more even. I
mean,
flatter.
Audyssey is really trying to make things more linear. That is the part that's trying to make it linear.
Right. So you're having the multiple subs, which you do not have, but you're saying that it sounds great from your seat anyways, which is fine.
Very possible in this setup. Yeah, that's why we said try one first, because you're in this more open space where your theater area is not taking up the entirety of the room, and it is possible that one sub in his particular setup could deliver good results, and it sounds like it has.
Right. So, in this case, when you're listening to the sweeps, what you're listening for is the volume to stay the same.
Yeah. No big ups and
sweep.
Downs in the volume as you're listening to this sweep from high to low or low to high. It doesn't matter which direction you go. But yeah, I mean, I will tell you to listen to a sweep because if you listen to it without Audyssey, you might hear some ups and downs in the volume as this sweep plays. And play it on repeat and move across all your seats and see how uniform and linear and even it all is. And then after you've run Audyssey, see if it's any better. See if it's any more linear or any more uniform. You're hoping that it is. And if it is, Audyssey has done its job, and it's been a benefit because the signal says, hey, play all of these frequencies one after another, all at the same volume, and if they're not, then something has gone awry.
Right. So he's trying using the Netflix app built into the Sony TV. Is it supposed to look all dark with crushed blacks? No. What's going on? He asks.
Were you watching Dolby Vision? Because there is a known issue at the moment with Sony's TV built-in Netflix app when playing Dolby Vision that it's crushing blacks and making it too dark. So I wonder if he's like, hey, I got myself a Dolby Vision TV. I'm going to test out something in Dolby Vision. Because that could very well be the case. It is a known issue. They're working on a fix. But we instructed Josh to get an Apple TV 4K. Use that. It's the best Netflix player. Use that.
Which answers his next question could he still get the best Netflix audio quality from the external Netflix streaming device instead of the Sony TV's built-in Netflix app? I don't understand why he thinks that the Sony has the best audio quality. I mean,
well, it is one of the devices listed under Netflix that is capable of outputting all the way up to Atmos.
But so does the
So does the Apple TV 4K.
Well, I was going to say, so there's Xbox One, and so there's a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. Several devices can. But we told you to get an Apple TV 4K, and, I mean, essentially use that for everything other than YouTube. So, use the Apple TV 4K.
So if he starts renting 4K HDR movies from Apple, do they look and or sound noticeably worse than physical Ultra HD Blu-rays? Well, it would depend on your internet connection.
Yeah, some of that for sure. Yeah, because when you're doing it through the Apple TV 4K, it will stream only. There's no way to download 4K
There's nothing
titles.
to download it to. There's no hard drive in there.
There are 32 gigs built into the Apple TV 4K.
Oh, yeah.
You can download 1080p videos.
It's not holding a 4K. It's not going to hold a 4K movie. But, so there is going to be some compression no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just part of it. No one's sending you. There's that one service that will send you fully uncompressed everything, but you have to download the whole movie to a hard drive.
Kaleidoscape.
Yeah. Kaleidoscape will do that for you. So, no, there's going to be differences. Will it be noticeable? I mean, probably. I doubt on the audio side you'll notice a whole lot.
Yeah.
You may notice. I notice it in the bass more likely than anything else. When you stream something that's from Netflix or some of the other places, even though it's Atmos, the bass is is completely different for me than when I use a regular, an actual physical disc. But you may or may not notice that. Depending on
I mean, I would have to say overall, I mean, I'm very comfortable using my Apple TV 4K and iTunes to rent movies, because any movies where I'm like, I don't really want to buy this and I'm happy to spend $6 to rent it, so I'm going to watch it once and I'm not worried about owning it, I'm very happy to do that. I mean, could I get even slightly better video and audio quality on the physical disc? Yeah, but in Canada, where the heck am I going to rent it from? There's no option.
You guys don't have Redbox, right?
We don't have Redbox. We don't have Rent 4K. Discs by mail. So we got no options for renting. So for anything, for your absolute favorite movies, I'd still suggest, go ahead and buy them on disc. That is as good as they're going to look and sound. And there can be some small differences. I mean, usually a little bit of color banding here and there. That's the number one thing I might notice on the streamed version is a little bit of color banding here and there. And it is the not lossless version of the audio. Sometimes there's differences. I'm not even going to attribute that to being lossy versus lossless. I'm going to attribute that to different mixes.
You could, yeah.
Yeah. But, for the stuff you really want the absolute best, still get it on disc. But for anything where you're like, I just want to watch this movie, I'd be totally comfortable renting it.
Right. That was the way I felt about a lot of the DC movies.
Yeah.
Just Aquaman. I probably would have been okay with Captain Marvel just having streamed it. Captain Marvel, I've seen it twice now, and it's fine.
Absolutely.
It's a fine movie. There's plot holes big enough to drive a truck through, but it's fine. I'm happy to own it, and I'm glad I'm glad I didn't buy it for myself. I'm glad I got it as a present for Father's Day. Anthony bought some land in the Philippines where he plans to retire with his wife one day. He'll be building a house on the ground, from the ground up over the next several years, and a large dedicated home theater is a very high priority.
Nice.
He wants 2 rows of full recliner seats, at least 4 recliners in each row, but possibly 5 since he wants a perfectly centered seat for himself. Yeah, man, if you don't want to sit on the hump, you're going to have to do that. Or you can get...
you can do like the one in the middle flanked by 2 love seats. Or the 3-seater couch in the middle and then 2 more seats, something like that.
Yeah, I like. Yes, I agree. I like to have that perfectly centered seat for myself. He also like to have a 3rd row of bar stools with a counter behind the back row of recliners. They have already planned on 12-foot ceilings throughout the entire house. I wonder if that's a heat mitigation thing.
Might be.
I know New Orleans is like that. Yeah, fans with the high ceilings in New Orleans is very, very common. So he's considering dimensions of 29 by 19 by 12 for the theater. Do those make sense? 29. So he wants a table with bar stools. In front of that, he wants a row of seats, and in front of that, he wants another row of seats.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually a little bit more than you need.
I mean, I don't know.
Some of it depends on screen size and how far away that first row of seating is going to be from said
right,
screen.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm thinking speakers, too. It's like suddenly your surround back speakers don't make sense anymore because you've got...
they're very far away.
Not only are they very far away, but they basically have to be on the ceiling in order to get a line of sight to the front row. So
although he's got 12-foot ceilings, so they're not on his ceiling necessarily.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah, I mean,
so these dimensions work is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, these dimensions work. Oddly, though, they might be a little bit bigger than I might even recommend, even for the setup that you suggested. Because I mean, unless you're going to spend a heck of a lot of money on a crazy projector. Going bigger than 150 inches. I mean, 150 inches for me really pushes it on any normal consumer projector. I'm more comfortable with a 10-foot wide screen, a 137-inch diagonal screen. That's where I feel comfortable. 150, what is that? 130 inches wide. So 150 inches diagonal. That to me is like the max. And if you had that, I would sit 13 feet away from it.
So I guess it kind of depends on what else he wants in this room. So I mean, you're talking from screen to eyes, maximum of 13 feet to the seat that you care about.
Yeah, is that going to be the second row or is that going to be the first row? Yeah, that makes a big difference.
And then if you are you talking about false wall and then putting all the speakers behind?
I mean,
I
certainly would. I would certainly recommend having a false wall in here because I mean, if this is what you're doing up fully dedicated theater, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you basically that. So there's that distance to consider too. And you may just want to say, I want a 29-foot long room because it's the way it works.
Right.
And then you have a huge amount of space behind your screen where you use it for storage or whatever. You know what I mean?
I mean, the 19 feet wide, to me, if you do end up with 5 recliners across, the 19 feet wide works really well. I would say you probably don't want any smaller than 17 feet wide, right? 17 feet wide, you could do the 5-seater couch or the 1 seat in the middle with 2 love seats on either side. That would work with 17 feet wide. So I wouldn't go smaller than that, but 19 feet wide totally makes sense. I would go 27 feet long. I think 29 feet long is more than you need and starts to put those surround back speakers crazy far behind your primary seat. So I might go 27 feet long, which would still work. Maybe you land somewhere in between a 135 and a 150 inch screen. If you do that, maybe you're 12 feet away from the screen with like a 146 inch or a 145 inch screen or something like that, land a little bit in between. So I would be like 27 feet long, 19 feet wide. That's fine. 11 foot tall ceiling, just so you're sticking with that prime number, which should be easy. If the construction is 12, you can put in a false drop thing and run all your wires up there and put your lights into a drop tile ceiling that isn't actually cutting holes in the physical ceiling. That type of stuff could be very handy.
Right. So he says, should he have the seating risers constructed as part of the framing for the room, or should he just build a rectangle and put the risers in later? This is an interesting question.
It is.
Because the upside is if you have it built as part of the room, then it's a little bit easier as far as just peace of mind, just getting it all in there, getting it all set up, and then you carpet the whole thing.
And the plans for any wiring, like you're probably going to have electrical outlets for your recliner seats, that type of stuff. It'll all be planned with your architect, with your builder, to make sure that all that stuff is in there. Yeah.
But do you know what chairs you're going to use? Because sometimes that makes a big difference as far as your height of your riser is going to be. If the front chairs are pretty low and with low backs, well then your back ones don't have to be quite as high to see over the top of them. There's that to consider. Plus, if you put the riser in later, you have the option of doing something as far as acoustics with this.
Yes.
Making it very inert, turning it into a
big old bass trap.
Big old bass trap. You have those options.
You do have the option of making it a resonator. We do not recommend that here, but some people just have it in their mind that they want to do it, so you have that option too.
Becomes a bass shaker for your.
I'm in favor of planning. And it sounds like you've got the time, right? He's not in a time crunch for this. So if there's, lots and lots of planning being done, I'm certainly not opposed to having it built in as part of it. That will help with making it inert. You can make sure that the construction is all there so that these risers don't move at all, that they're very
do
solid.
Have to be, and that's something that you have to talk about your contractor or your architect. They have to be overbuilt.
Yeah.
The riser does. It's going to be to the point where they're going to be like, why? Because I'm going to put enough base energy into this room that it's going to try to shake everything, including this floor. It needs to be inert. It has to be overbuilt.
Braced, damped.
Yeah. Braced, damped, yes, and filled with insulation.
And filled with insulation.
They're like, no one fills the floor with insulation. I do.
Makes sense, but filled with insulation, and then with the ability to have air move in and out of those cavities so that the whole thing is acting as a bass trap. I mean, honestly, explaining it to your builder might be enough of a hassle that you're like, you know what, just build a rectangle and I'll put the things in later. Because I mean, if you build the rectangle, you can always add the risers later. The only wrinkle in that is the electrical side of things. That can be a bit of a pain to try and retrofit, because if the electrical outlets have been put into regular areas, then technically you still have to be able to access those junctions to be within code, and that can be an issue if you don't want to rewire. So since you have the time to plan, I would lean towards planning this out, having it all part of the construction, and talk to your builder along the way to explain what it is you're doing and why you want these inert and filled with insulation.
Yeah, I know why this guy, I know this guy's planning on retiring here, which means that this is the last house he's going to ever own. But realistically, having a built-in riser into a room is not optional, not optimal when it comes to resell at a later date. Yeah, you're right about that, yeah. So even if you have your builder, you plan out the riser, I would have them still build it detachable. You know what I mean? I still would. I just think that it's not.
It's a good point.
If not, you're going to end up somebody is going to end up having to tear the thing out at some point. It's going to cost somebody a whole bunch of money to do that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Steven This is Stephen's from the UK. He says he recently discovered our podcast and he's found it really interesting. He considered himself well-versed in AV, but now that he's heard us, and he's appreciated what we bring to the conversation. He runs a 5.2.4 setup using M&K speakers and a Ken Kestrel... Kreisel?
He's the K in M&K, Ken Kreisel.
He is? Yeah.
He is.
DXD 808 sub with a Marantz. I guess he got two of those because it's the subs. With a Marantz SR7011 and a NAD D250 amplifier. He's very happy with it all. But he did tell his Marantz that he had two subs during setup, and Audyssey gave them independent settings via sub EQ HT.
All right.
He heard our recent discussion with Rob, in particular, saying that he tells his Marantz to receive only has one sub. Can we please confirm that he didn't mishear or misunderstand that? He's got a Y splitter, so it'd be easy enough to feed both of his subs a single subwoofer output on the Marantz, then tell his Marantz that he only has one sub. But how and why would that sound better? Okay, I'm going to be... So I've done it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived with it both ways, and I've just recently changed to the Y splitter single sub method. First of all, the distance settings for my subs and were like 0.2 meters.
So they were already very close to being the same in your setup, Tom.
Yeah, in my setup, the difference was marginal.
Right.
As far as how differently they were set. Their volumes were set differently.
Okay.
The trim levels, but that's immaterial to the discussion at hand. So the idea here is you want both your subs to be working in concert. They are a single unit. They are the base,
one bass producing thing.
Yeah, that happens to be across the room from each other, but that's what they are. So the idea here is that if you're, especially if your room is set up such that you're very close to the front or very much closer to the back, your subwoofer distances will be set quite different, and that creates two different speakers doing two different things in essence. What we want is the subwoofers to do the same thing at the same time at all times. So what you do is use the Y splitter on a single subwoofer output. You individually calibrate each subwoofer to 73 dB would be, or 72 dB would be correct, and then turn them both on at the same time, and that should give you around 75 dB. May or may not, depending on how things go in your room and how you have your sub set up, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Then you tell your Marantz you have one sub. The Marantz adjusts that one sub as if it was one speaker, and that gives you what Harman and all the researchers were talking about as far as multiple sub placements. They're talking about those subs all working at the same time.
Yeah, really what this all boils down to is that in the auto setup in Audyssey, including with this sub EQHT, there's no way to avoid it time aligning the subwoofer signal with all of the other speaker channel signals. And when they're being done independently as two independent subs, it's trying to time align sub 1 and sub 2 independently. It's trying to time align sub 1 with all of the speaker channels and then also time align sub 2 with all of the speaker channels. But it's not treating the two subwoofers as one cohesive unit, which is the way that we think of it's one bass producing thing. We want to time align the two subs working together. We want that combination to be time aligned with all of the speaker channels. And there's no way to get that to work automatically in Audyssey. It's when you've told it that you have two subs, it's always going to try and time align the two of them independently. And unfortunately, that doesn't work out mathematically the way that we want it to.
And if you look at what the settings for your subs are, the distances is what you're looking at as far as the time aligning.
That's right.
So if you look at your Marantz and it has the distances identical or nearly the same, then you basically you're
then
done.
You're okay. Yeah.
You're done. Mine were fine. Mine were very close. They were within like 0.2 of a meter of each other, and I still did it. So the difference has been that I think I goosed the bass up a little bit at the very end of the process, which I did not do. I did not go back and check the individual sub levels, and I did when I had them both together just to see, and I goosed them up, and now I've got some things buzzing in here that I have to go and track down because they weren't buzzing before and they're now buzzing. But Captain Marvel's shaking the couch like crazy. I mean, but the thing is, I'm going to kind of bump back to the last guy who's talking about this is the same guy? No, the different guy with the riser. When you have something that resonates in your room, it's much different than having like a couch that shakes. When that couch shakes, you're shaking too.
Yeah.
So everything, like the bass is vibrating you and vibrating the couch kind of the same. So you don't really notice it nearly as much as you do as if you have something that actually resonates. Because that thing that resonates shakes a lot more than you expect it to, and it becomes very distracting.
Yeah,
so,
I earlier on I wrote a 12-step guide to setting up dual subs. So you can search that. You can Google AVRant 12-step guide to setting up dual subs, and in there I explain further and go through the process. I don't give a full explanation of why, but I explain the process of what's important to understand here is that I am taking care of making sure that I have uniform bass using my 2 subs in my room first. And then I go, okay, that is now my bass producing thing. And now Audyssey, you just treat that as 1 sub. So it is this in this sense, 2-step process of get the bass all organized first. And then as far as Audyssey is concerned, it's just 1 bass producing thing. I'm not going to allow Audyssey to try and brute force the time alignment of 2 separate subs because it doesn't do it correctly.
Right. So you will need an SPL meter.
Yes.
You will need to manually calibrate each sub individually so that it is at a volume. 73 is what we will recommend, though. Even though I did that, the Audyssey still didn't like what I did. But they were both calibrated to the same volume level at my seat, so yeah, I knew that was fine. We've actually had a listener, Ray Coronado, who is installer and calibrator and that sort of thing. He went and he has 5 subs in his room, and he time aligned all of them, manually.
Individually. He did.
Individually. And at the end of it, and it took him, he said, half a Saturday to do that?
Oh, at least,
to get all that stuff, perfectly time aligned. He said in the end it sounded worse.
Much, yeah. From seat to seat, the uniformity was much worse than just feeding them all a mono signal, leaving them where they were. He didn't even change any phase knobs or anything. But, he had 4 of them in the 4 corners and then 1 right behind his seat. And the 4 in the 4 corners, that should work. You shouldn't have to change any phase knobs or anything. Sent them all a mono signal, and that gave him much better uniformity and linearity, which is what you're after. Yeah.
All right, Karl. Scott Wilkinson was the MC for the Value Electronics TV Shootout that we mentioned last week, in which the Sony A9G OLED was crowned King of TV. Scott mentioned that they used a matrix HDMI switcher with HDMI cables that were all the same length to make sure that all the TVs were getting an identical signal from a single Kaleidoscape server. Was that really necessary? Could different HDMI cable lengths actually make a difference in the picture quality? Yes.
Right.
To an extent.
Some of them could go all sparkly and drop out.
Yeah. So if you're sending max bandwidth through a cable that's 10 feet long, and the cable is perfectly capable of letting all of that through without any signal or enough signal loss for it to be a problem, and then you take another cable that's 30 feet long and it can also send through the max bandwidth with no problems, then you are correct. It is not necessary.
No, I'm certain this was to appease the people who are taking part in this subjective evaluation of these TVs, because there was nothing objective about this shootout. Right. This was a purely subjective look at them, give them a score. There were some things that they were giving a score to that made absolutely no sense that I'll get into in a minute. This wasn't necessary at all as long as the cables were passing the signal without any dropouts, sparklies, or anything like that. They absolutely didn't have to be all the same length, but I'm sure that was to appease certain people who would complain if that weren't the case.
Well, and that's just from a methodology standpoint, making sure all things are equal.
Right, yeah. Get rid of as many variables as you possibly can. Sure.
You're just trying to eliminate bias. Now, we know that, and anybody who knows anything about HDMI cables knows that they either work or they don't.
Yeah.
There's a very little gray area there where you're getting the picture, but it's kind of screwed up. But there's no I think this might have made a little bit of a difference in the black level. That doesn't exist.
But there are people who believe that it does. So.
They do, and they are wrong.
But
they also apparently have a ton of free time to complain about it on the internet.
Yes, they do.
So It's just easier. But in general, when you're putting together a test of any kind, you should try to equalize all the potential sources of bias.
Yeah.
Even though this one wasn't really it. He mentions that they use a 30-foot copper passive HDMI cables from a company called Metra. He was impressed that the signals remained rock solid even at that length.
Yeah, 30 feet is about as far as you can go with a passive copper cable.
And they had objective measurements to show that they could carry 24 gigabits per second signals. So Scott said he recommends them. But are those really differentiators, a reason to buy Metra brand cables versus any other brand? Well, honestly, knowing that a 30-foot cable can put out the full bandwidth is a reason to buy that cable.
Sure.
that is a reason that I would say, okay, yes, because there are 30-foot cables that will technically pass a signal as long as it's 30 frames per second, or 24 frames per second, or 1080p. They won't necessarily do that
easily. Yeah.
So,
even Blue Jeans, because Blue Jeans is exceedingly honest in their measurements and stuff, even they won't say for sure at 30 feet that their top passive cable will do that for sure. I mean, it will. I'll say that it will. But Blue Jeans will say, well, technically, we don't have the certification and all the measurements to say 100% that it will. Whereas Metra appears to, I don't know. I mean, it was third-party testing that was being done, and it seemed to work. So, I mean, that's fine. If this is what you're doing, I don't have any beef with that. I don't think you need to pay as much as they charge for their cables to do that. I mean, if you are starting to get to those type of links, hey, maybe you transition over to an active HDMI cable so you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, I mean, all of it is totally fine. But no, I don't think you have to use their brand of cables.
That's right. I mean, but if you were at the store and you're looking around at cables and you need 30 feet and you don't have access to active cables and you can't wait, you need something now, and you have a Metra cable in front of you, I would be 100% okay with you
I'm fine
buying
with
it
that.
because basically when I needed a longer cable for this room, I went to the store and bought them all.
Yeah.
I bought every brand that they had and then basically just hooked it up to the projector I was using and hooked it up to a PS3 to make sure that because I had a bunch of 30-foot cables, but none of them would, pass the full, at least what I was.
So I will just mention on that Value Electronics Shootout, they had one category, which was SDR dynamic range. And I was like, how is that a subjective, SDR dynamic range is from 0 to 100 nits. That's what it is. How can a TV be better or worse at that when all of them can go to at least 700 nits? That category made no sense to me, but whatever. They still gave it a score.
Yeah. Scott says he's now an 8K convert primarily because screen sizes just keep increasing. So what do we think about that? I mean, the only reason that you need to be an 8K convert is if your screen size increases, but you do not increase
your viewing
distance. Yeah. So, yes, if you're planning on sitting a foot and a half away from a 65-inch screen, then I think 8K is really important for you. Mm-hmm. I also think it's important for you to sit further back away from that stupid screen and then get 4K or 1080p. Honestly, I'm still not a 4K convert.
I know.
I'm sorry. I'm not.
Honestly,
the HDR, yes, okay, yeah, I'm down with it. But 4K is still. I have never seen a pixel in my home theater. Never seen a pixel in my home theater.
And you've got a projection screen, and you don't sit that far away. No, I've gone beyond resolution count stuff. I'm fully on board with this. Let's get to modular displays where what I care about is the pixel pitch, how close are the pixels to each other, and then the resolution ends up being whatever it is based upon the size of screen that I stitched together from the modules. I actually am fully in favor of that, and I don't care what the end resolution ends up being.
Right, so you end up buying pixels that are further apart
if I'm sitting farther away.
If you're sitting farther away, because you need to buy more of the panels.
Yeah, to make the bigger image.
To make the bigger image. So you still get a 4K or 1080p, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
It's just massive.
I really don't care what the end pixel count is. They need to be close enough together that I'm not seeing pixels from my given viewing distance at that screen size. That's all I care about.
So he says he doesn't expect there to be an 8K physical disc format. Do we agree?
I do. I don't really expect there to be a 8K disc format. I mean, we're seeing not great sales of Ultra HD Blu-rays.
It's because they're stupid expensive. And, the only thing they really offer... First of all, I don't know anybody other than us no one has ever asked me about Ultra HD.
Yeah.
No one's asked me about that.
It's just not a thing. I mean, is any normal consumer going, well, I know we have Ultra HD Blu-rays, but I've got to have 8K. It's just not. I think they've kind of reached the point where consumers don't really want any more or feel any need for it. I don't think there's going to be an 8K physical disc. If we have 8K content, I think it'll be downloads and streaming.
I honestly, and I'm kind of coming around this from a different perspective, maybe, but I'm very uncomfortable with the direction that a lot of media is going right now towards essentially content you don't physically own. That you don't have physically in your hand. I mean, because in the end, even if I decide never to, to get rid of all my VHS players and my VHS, Star Wars and Die Hard collector's editions, I can't view them. I still own them.
Yeah,
I still have access to them if I want to. Whereas, if this, Stadia, whatever it is,
I know that Google
out,
Stadia thing. I would never buy a game on Google Stadia. Never.
Why?
I do not trust Google to keep Stadia going.
Well, it's not just keeping them going. It's like you just have no access to it.
It's not yours. It's theirs, and they can take it away anytime. Even though you bought it, they can just take away your access to it. Yeah.
Like, I am not interested in having I'm not interested in buying an 8K anything. I mean, if I can't download it to something and play it back whenever I want.
Yeah.
Like, I have to have access. If I'm purchasing, renting is fine. I got no problems with renting. Streaming is fine.
Yep.
I have no problems with Hulu or Netflix in, losing content.
Because
we went to go watch.
It's your option to keep paying for the service or not.
Right. We went to watch The Good Place, and I went to Hulu where I normally watch it, and it's gone.
Yeah.
The first 2 seasons are gone. So I went to Netflix and watched the end of season 2 because I couldn't remember what happened. And then we went to go watch the beginning of season 3 on Hulu, and it's not there. It's episode 8. I'm like, what the?
Okay.
What? I mean, because after a certain amount of time, I guess, because is that season still going on?
No.
Is that what's
it finished
happening?
a long time ago, but...
I don't have access to it right now. So I'm waiting for The Good Place to come onto Netflix so I can see it. And that irritates me, but I didn't buy it.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. If I bought it,
if you bought it from iTunes and you didn't have an option to download it from iTunes onto a device that you can keep, and then one day Apple just says, yeah, we're just shutting that down.
Yeah, we're done. We're good. Thanks anyways. Thanks for the money. We're out. So I don't know if there'll be an 8K physical disc format, but I know that...
No, I doubt it.
I am not going to be interested in purchasing things that don't have a way for me to keep it. Yep. That's it. So do we have any thoughts about ScreenX? It uses 3 projectors and screens that go up to the sides, of the movie theater to create what they call a 270-degree viewing experience. Yeah, I mean, I've experienced stuff like this before at like Disney World and Disneyland and all that stuff. It's annoying and fine, but it's also distracting. Like,
this isn't the way I want to watch full blockbuster movies. I mean, if it's a thing like Omnimax, where it's created for this, that's part of the experience, is this wraparound thing. Okay, sure, that's fine. That's a novelty. I don't particularly want to watch. I think they're promoting, the next Spider-Man movie is going to be in this format. I'm like, I'm not super into that. Also, there was Barco Escape, which was this exact same thing. And if you go to Barco Escape's website, they're like, yeah, we shut down. So that's how popular Barco Escape was, and ScreenX is exactly the same thing.
Well, I just don't see what value that adds. Like, if it's not where I can see it, if I have to turn my head to look at it, if I have to look over the top of the dude who's sitting next to me, to see the thing, then I don't know how that,
Yeah.
how
No,
that
it's a
adds
thing to
anything.
try and get people out of their homes and into the movie theater. This is something you cannot get at home. I get that, but to me it's a novelty thing, and I'd rather keep it in the novelty exhibition.
Like, so the VR experience you can get at like Legoland. Like, I went to Legoland with my son. They had a VR headset, and you can ride the roller coaster with it, and then you can turn your head and see things all over the place. It's kind of cool. It is a novelty, and it works in that aspect. But still, the majority of what's going on is directly in front of you, and you got to think about it from the perspective of the directors too. And this is a completely different way of thinking about how to frame the movie that you're watching.
Yeah,
you know?
and the movies that they did make in Barco Escape, they just kind of like added in some superfluous stuff on the sides just so there was something to put over there. But they, of course, since they know, yes, this is going to be released later, and it has to be, for a full Hollywood movie, it has to be showable in other theaters. It can't be exclusive to this. So, of course, all the content that matters is still on that one middle screen, and then there's just superfluous stuff to the sides.
All right, James from Facebook. So James' son wants a large 4K flat panel, at least 75 inches for under $2,000. $1,300 would be preferable. He's a heavy gamer and also a movie lover. What current TV models would we suggest? 75 inches is out of TCL ranges, and it's got to be minimum 75. Yeah, once you get this projector. But anywho, because you can't get it for $1,300. That's the beginning part of it. 4K flat panel, at least 75 inches. Movie and gamer. So gaming, I thought we said that Samsung has the best, but I don't think.
Yeah, well, because they got the variable refresh rate.
I don't think you can get there for $1,300 though for 75 inches.
Well, not with something with full array local dimming. No, not from Samsung. Now, I can get on board with recommending you a Q6. Now, that's last year's model. That's a 2018 model. You could definitely get the 75-inch Q6. You could even, if you stretch the budget a little bit past $2,000, because for $2,200, you can get the 82-inch Q6. So the Q6 is a QLED. It is edge lit, but it has the best native panel contrast that's sort of out there. It's like native 7,000 to 1 panel contrast, which is about as good as most other full array local dimming LCD TVs get that have a native contrast of about 3,500 or 4,000 to 1, which is typical. So it's got a really good LCD panel with good native contrast, the excellent quantum dot color that the Q6s from last year had, and the price and the size matches, and it's got the full variable refresh rate. So I can get behind that choice. I don't highly recommend the step down models, which would be like last year it was the NU8000, this year it's the RU8000. I don't super highly recommend those because the hit on the native panel contrast is big. It's down to like 3,500 or 4,000 to 1, and it's totally noticeable, at least to me. So the Q6 I can get behind, but if the price has to be under $2,000, I would point you to the Vizio. Again, last year's 2018 P series, which you can definitely get the 75-incher for. I think right now at Best Buy it's $1,600. So it's not $1,300, but it's definitely under $2,000 for the 75-inch size.
I don't think $1,300 is a reasonable price for 75.
It's a bit tough. That one does have full array local dimming, excellent contrast and black levels. If you're more the movie lover and watching in the dark, I would probably lean towards the Vizio here. It doesn't have variable refresh rate, but it can take a 120 hertz signal. So that's pretty darn good on the gaming side and really low latency. So as long as variable refresh rate isn't the absolute most important thing to you, I would probably get the Vizio P series.
Okay. Yeah, so very rarely do I like when we recommend something that's over the price point that they are suggesting.
Well, I'm willing to say when it's a small amount.
It's a small amount, but he's also asking for 75 inches, and you're saying, well, for $200 more than your top price, you can not only get all these good things that we know are good, but you also get an 82
inches, yes.
Which
there's no option in Vizio's lineup for that big.
Yeah, I feel like that's enough benefit that I'm okay with recommending that. If it were me, I mean, it depends on really how important It really depends on how important the gaming is to you. Because for
the
me,
Vizio is still an excellent gaming TV. It's just not variable refresh rate if that's the number one thing you want.
Yeah. I would be 100% okay with that Vizio. Infinite Gary. Gary asks, do we plan on checking out an 8K display in the near future so that we can share our thoughts? I think it's stupid. With extremely little 8K content available and no clear plans for an 8K disc format or 8K streaming or broadcast in the USA, do we agree that it all comes down to how much better upscaled 4K content looks on these 8K displays? And what about broadcast and cable TV that's mostly still 1080i or 720p? How are those going to look? Dude, scaling from 4K to 8K, it's not an issue. I mean, it's
scaling from 1080p to 8K is not that difficult.
These are not like scaling is stopped being important like once we
although
hit
going
1080p.
all the way from 720p or 1080i,
that's different.
That can be a bit fuzzy.
That's different. But
no, I think this whole 8K thing is. I mean, I know NHK over in Japan promised it. They're like 2020, we're going to broadcast the Olympics in 8K. It's going to be super high vision. They didn't even envision HDR at the time, so It was just about resolution. It was still going to be Rec 709 color. I mean that's what. But they promised it, so it's like they had to do it. But I just really don't think it's important.
No, I don't think so either. I honestly, I don't see how we're going to see an 8K display and not have the differences that we're noticing be about bandwidth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because without a physical disc,
if you have the bandwidth to give me an 8K resolution, use that same bandwidth to give me a less compressed 4K, please.
Right,
I would
exactly.
much rather have that.
Yes, exactly. Which is probably what they'll do. And then just let the TV scale it. LG Display announced that they'll offer 40-inch OLED panels in 2020.
48-inch, just to make that enunciated, yes.
48-inch OLED panels in 2020. Would that smaller screen size potentially offer any benefits over the larger OLEDs? Maybe look a bit sharper due to the smaller pixel pitch, or be a bit brighter? Do we think Sony will offer 48-inch OLED models? They'll be less expensive than the 55-inch models, right? Who knows? I mean, they may charge more because
I would absolutely assume they'll be less expensive. I would absolutely expect Sony will offer one. If LG does, Sony will.
So those smaller, the smaller panels, are just for essentially people who don't want to spend as much money, and people who are sitting really close to things,
or just have a smaller space. Like I've been saying, in the UK, they're clamoring for smaller than 55-inch because their living rooms are small and the space is tight, and they just don't want 55-inch. They want something smaller than that.
Yeah, the 48-inch display, isn't unreasonable for a lot of gaming solutions. Where you're sitting at a desk. That is not an unreasonable size for that situation. So, there is call for this, and the problem, of course, is the pixel density. Getting this pixel density, that dense,
because it's still going to be 4K resolution, but that means the same number of pixels in a smaller amount of surface area.
Yeah.
Could it look sharper from closer? if you're a nose lengths away from the 48-inch, it'll be a little bit better, smaller, tighter pixels than the 55-inch. I wouldn't expect it to be any brighter. It's the each pixel is still self-emissive, so they're not any brighter.
Yeah. Brian recently started listening to our podcast after a friend recommended us to him. He said, "Who's your friend?" So we can make him listener of the week. Let's do that. Brian has really enjoyed listening, and he subjected his wife to 8 hours of AVRant during a road trip. Jesus, lady, I am so sorry.
I know, right?
Brian, make her listen to this part only, okay? Because we are sorry that your husband did this to you, or girlfriend. Was it husband? Wife. Yes, husband. All right. She isn't super into home theater, but she enjoyed our podcast. Well, she is a nice woman for lying to you.
Going along to get along, I think. But thank you. That's
thank
good.
you. Thank you.
I mean, if she didn't
tell all
actually
your girlfriends
divorce you or force you to turn it off, then it wasn't that bad, right? We know that.
Oh my God, it was like watching Ever After with my wife. She was totally into the show, and she's like, "You like it, right?" I'm like, "Yeah,
sure.
Fine,
it's not bad enough that I'll divorce you over it. I like it."
I straight up hated that show. Okay, so they're finishing their basement. He says he has it framed now, and it appears from his photos that the exterior walls have been insulated and drywalled, and now he wants to focus on wiring before any more drywall goes up. The theater area will be going to a section of the basement that's approximately 28 feet wide by 22 feet long, 9-foot ceilings throughout the whole thing. Isn't the perfect rectangle. The rear right section will have a bump back for a games area, and the right side wall the right side will bump out a bit to provide a doorway into the bedroom just in front of the HVAC system. There's a major support beam that will run left to right overhead with support columns coming down. From the front wall to the support beam is 12 feet. He plans to have all of his seating in front of the support beam and columns, so he should end up with roughly a 10-foot viewing distance and about 10 feet of space behind the seats. He plans to have a small bar at the back on the back wall. Okay, so let me look at this.
I'm going to try to explain these photos to Tom and everyone else because it is a bit confusing, but
I see it.
We start with the diagram there, and so I mean it doesn't look like it in here, but this will end up being an enclosed space. Because there's the opening on the right side, but that actually is going to close in what's going to be the utility room. So,
I see that.
Yeah. So he's drawn it in there because the original plans didn't have, but he's
he's
doing his own framing.
It is essentially a rectangle.
Yeah. A little bit of a bump at the back and the
Is that
side.
a stairway at the back wall? There's a stairway on the back wall.
Yeah, so in behind the bar. So if you can see the bar that's on the back wall there, it's pretty easy to tell what's up at the front there with the screen and then the seating area. And at the very back, there's this small little bar. So behind the bar is actually the stairway. So we sent this photo where we can see the frames for the stairs. This should be the very first photo just below it here.
I see it.
So those stairs, so what we're looking at there, that's where the bar will go. Basically where the blue electrical outlet is in front of the stairway, that's where the bar will go. You'll go behind the bar to go up the stairs. And then as we move to what will be the right, if you're facing forward, what will be to the right of the stairs, he's got this big like pink happy birthday or something, happy 20,
I don't know what's
whatever
going on with
that is. But
I see
that's standing
it's already
over.
closed off. He looks like he's got all this stuff closed off already.
Well, so that's the back section there. That's sort of be the games area. Now, what makes the photos a little bit confusing is that in the photos that he sent, he doesn't have the framing up in the photos. He has the framing up now in real life, but in the photos, he doesn't have the framing up for the bedroom and the HVAC area. So we're seeing the whole open area. So basically, if you can see this vertical support beam that's just in front of the HVAC there, that's sort of where the bedroom will be, all right? That whole area there is the bedroom, and then the HVAC is just behind the bedroom. So
I would still, like, in my mind, this is still a rectangular room.
It
like,
is.
This is rectangular enough.
It's more or less a rectangular room, and just so that looking at these photos, you're aware that HVAC is not going to be inside of the theater, that HVAC system and that whole open area in front of the HVAC in the photos, that's the bedroom. And so all of that is going to be walled off. So just so you can see.
So for everybody else, like this is a 28 by 22 foot room.
Yeah.
There's a the stairway at the back. You know, if you follow the stairway, you know, it kind of if you're sitting in the couch, behind you in the left corner would be the beginning of the stairs going up behind you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then where those stairs are, you know, so it kind of bumps out into the room. There's that wall continues a little bit past what would be your right wall, where there'll be another wall. So there'll be like maybe a 2 foot, maybe less jut out in that right rear corner.
Yeah.
With doors everywhere. So I assume there's a door at the top of the stairs, or the bottom of the stairs, or something like that.
That I'm not certain about. He didn't specify, but it sounds like this is
there needs to be a door someplace. Let's just say that
somewhere at the bottom or the top of the stairs.
Yeah, there needs to be a door. So this is essentially still a rectangle, but there is no really good place to put anything in the right rear corner. So if you're looking at subwoofers, then subwoofers would be front right, rear left.
I mean, he's got enough space they could actually go side to side
as well.
He definitely has enough space that you could put one on the left wall of the theater and the right wall of the theater, which would be like the party wall to the bedroom, but that should be okay. You're building this whole thing, so that's where I would put two subs in here as the midpoints of the two side walls.
A ton of pictures, dude. I'm not seeing.
I know.
Okay, that's very confusing. Okay, I got the rest of it.
Yeah.
Brian says that most of his content will be streaming services and gaming. He isn't concerned much about having excellent seat-to-seat uniformity. He figures anyone else coming over is going to think it's amazing no matter what. That is true.
But you will know, and this is easy enough to do.
Yeah. So he owns a pair of Paradigm Studio 100 V2 towers. He would like to continue using. His Paradigm dealer told him that the most similar Paradigm series that is currently available is the Prestige series, and that he should buy Prestige series speakers all around to match. But since Brian wants a full 7.1.4 Atmos setup, that would be too expensive.
Yep.
So yeah, the Paradigm is not cheap.
Not that.
So
series.
he was thinking. Yeah, he's thinking he'd get the Prestige Center, but less expensive surround backs, and Atmos speakers. Do we have any recommendations? He'd be happy with in-walls, but the speakers don't have to be in-walls. If something wall-mounted would be better. RBH would absolutely 100% play perfectly with your
Very
paradigms.
much so. Although, do they have anything form factor wise that's much better than Paradigm's own offerings just in a less expensive series? Because there's 3 series below the Prestige series.
Yeah.
And actually, the Prestige series still uses their aluminum tweeter, which
Right, okay.
they continue to use, not that exact same aluminum tweeter, but aluminum tweeters all the way down the lineup.
Right.
And it's not going to be so different. I mean, Paradigm targets a very neutral linear sound. And I mean, for
They're
your
Canadian.
surround backs and especially your Atmos speakers, I absolutely do not think that they all have to be Prestige series. I completely agree with you.
No. Okay, getting the center channel is fine. I got no
Sure.
problems with
Yep.
that. And I
agree.
would be very much along the lines of what Rob just said. If you want to stick all Paradigm, just pick the one that looks the
Well,
best.
because the monitor series,
Yeah.
they have the surround 3s if you want something that's nice and easy to mount on the walls, on your side walls, and perhaps even on your back wall for surround backs. Those surround 3s, they're like a third of the price of the Prestige surround speakers, and they will totally be fine. They also have the Atom monitors, which would be great as surround backs. I mean, you could just put little shelves on the back wall and hold the Atom monitors. Perfect for surround backs. For the overheads, I don't know. I mean, Paradigm certainly has in ceilings if you want to do in ceilings, but they also have their Cinema series and their Millennia series, which are satellite, easy to mount speakers that are nowhere near as expensive as the Prestige. So I don't see a big reason that you have to leave Paradigm's family. You can definitely just step down in their series, and they'll still sound. I mean, especially for your surround backs and your Atmos speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'd probably just put Atom monitors in all those positions.
So he says, how high should the surround and surround back speakers be placed? Well, for the surrounds, you want the tweeter to be about, a foot behind and maybe 2 feet up from your ear.
He's going to have these fairly high ceilings. I would say have the tweeters 5 feet off the ground. To me, there's no way that's not going to work.
It kind of depends on your couch, too. You got to kind of factor that in as well. I mean, American furniture is pretty much the same, but it is possible that he goes to IKEA, gets himself an itty-bitty couch, because this is an L-shaped couch that he's
planned
at
anyway
here.
in the diagram. Yeah.
That's what's written down. So I don't know if that's what he's going to end up with or not. So a foot back, 2 feet up, tweeter height, and that's kind of where you want him to be. Now, I do not agree that you should get surround backs. I don't.
Really?
I don't like surround backs in this. I don't. They're so far away, and
They're
they're basic.
They're 10 feet back.
I mean, for the rest of you that are listening and not looking at the pictures that I'm looking at, his couch is actually in front of the midpoint of the room. Like everything, is front of the midpoint of the room. So the surround backs are way, way, way back, which is fine.
I mean, the whole thing is 22 feet.
The problem that bothers me, the problem that I don't like about this is that ends up being a bar area.
Yes,
which is fine.
Yes,
but if the bar area is never going to be in use while you're watching movies, then surround backs are fine.
Sure.
If you think that people are going to be back there sometimes while other things are going on on the TV, if you're going to have like a party where you're watching the Super Bowl and there's going to be people by the bar and people up over there, there's going to be speakers that are going to be blasting directly into their faces.
But they'll only be doing surround back duties, which it's not that much that often.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I would go 5.2.4 or 6.
You could.
And do that. I would do top fronts, top rears, and then 5.
That's
5.2.
Tom's take. I'm not opposed to surround backs, so you can listen to whichever one of us you agree more with.
So the surround backs, what you want them to be is in line with your front, left, and right speaker.
If you could, yeah.
If you can. Front, left, and right speaker, and then high enough that they have line of sight to your ear.
Yeah. Again, in here, that might be with the tweeters 5 to 6 feet off the floor. Something like that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So he's considering a Denon X6400 H to power all 11 speaker. He has a Harman Kardon 7300 right now. It doesn't have any room correction, but he loves its sound quality. How would the Denon compare? I mean, fine. I don't know what it's,
No,
what's its sound quality? What does that?
Yes, I guess he has been indoctrinated with the idea that AV receivers have their own inherent sound.
If they do, then you just use Audyssey's curve thing to
the editor. Yes.
Get the sound quality you want, because the only reason that an AV receiver should have a sound or would have a sound these days. Now, this all stems from way back in the day when we were running Class A amps and things, amplifier technology and some of these other things were not as well designed as they are these days. There could be actual sound differences between electronics. I don't think that it was all as common as people said. I think it was more an interaction of the speakers that they were in the room that they were listening to, but whatever. But it became known that, Harman had this sound quality and Denon's were...
Oh, I mean, you've heard everything. I've heard.
Denon's were warm and
Yamahas are bright, and I've also heard the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Which
anyways, if an amplifier should not, and a receiver should not, color the sound in any way unless you ask it to. And if you asked it to, well, then you can ask it to, and especially with the new Audyssey editor app, you can literally ask it to do, go for any target curve you want.
That's right.
So if your Harman has some sort of target curve, go for that.
Sound quality, no concerns there. It can sound every bit as good as your Harman Kardon as far as that goes. I do question, though, even with a receiver as good as the X6400, powering all 11 speakers just from the receiver, you do have to remember that speakers also act as microphones. This is what your damping factor is about, which is, they are also microphones. So as you add more speakers to it, you start to increase the noise floor of the system as a whole. And given the price, right? What I'm bringing it all back to is price, because you can get the X4400H for like $600 less than the X6400H. And then you can take less than $600 and get yourself an external amplifier to, first of all, bump the 9-channel built-in X4400H up to a full 11 speakers. But, you are using very nice speakers up front. Maybe you just want to get like an Outlaw 5-channel amp or something like that. You power your front 3 with the Outlaw plus the other 2 speakers that have to be powered externally, and that total price will be less than the X6400H. So I could easily get in favor of something like that, just to put it out there.
So his Paradigm dealer said he likes Paradigm subs better than SVS. Shocking literally no one.
Well, he said he also sells SVS subs, but guess which ones cost more and make more profit? So
guess which ones have higher value for his bottom line. Hey, I love the Sub 1 and Sub 2 as well. I mean, the Paradigm Sub 1, Sub 2 will absolutely crush almost any room you put them in. It really doesn't matter, but they are also stupidly expensive.
They are.
But what sub or subs would we suggest? SVS. Okay, so
well, I mean, we don't even have to go there. I mean, he's got a large enough room size. We could go HSU. We could go power sound audio.
Sure.
Yeah. We could go rhythmic.
Okay, so how much do you care about aesthetics? How much do you care about certain other aspects, floor space, that sort of thing? I mean, is this going to be hidden? Do you not care if it's,
because nobody else is doing cylinders like SVS is. But
That's true.
The thing is, he's got a large enough room here where I don't know if I would recommend the 2000 series cylinder. And the 4000 series cylinder is a lot more money and actually more than you need. If there were a 3000 series cylinder, that would be like the perfect choice in this room. And the 3000 series, you can get subs from other brands. They're not going to be cylinders. They're going to be big boxes. But they have that level of output for less money than SVS sells.
So like that F15.
Yeah, like the 15-incher from Power Sound, which they $1,000. So it's definitely less expensive than the ported 3000 series sub from SVS. So I could easily point you to like the ported 15-incher from Power Sound Audio. Now, it's a big black box, all right? But if that's okay, that's the right type of output for your room size, and the price can't be beat.
Right. He says with having the Paradigm Perfect base kit that comes along with the higher end Paradigm subs make room correction in the AV receiver unnecessary. No.
You want Atmos anyway, so you're gonna wind up with the good room correction. So to me, that's almost a moot point. And no, there's no reason that you should pay thousands more for the Paradigm sub.
You just.
I mean, if you got one, it's not like you got a bad sub. We're not saying that at all. It's just completely unnecessary.
Paradigm makes perfectly reasonable subs, but we don't recommend them because they're expensive, not because they're bad.
Price, not the performance, just the price.
The performance is fine. Mm-hmm. It's just for the same performance, you can spend a lot less someplace else, which is why your dealer doesn't want to send you to the other ones. Okay. The thing is you're like what Rob just said. I think you said you want Audyssey anyway, so you're going to end up with Audyssey. What I think Rob meant was you're going to end up, in order to get a receiver to do the things that you want it to do. You're going to end up with Audyssey. You're going to end up with the highest level of Audyssey anyway. So you're basically getting it for free. So that perfect base kit, while it's fine,
it's absolutely fine.
It's in no way necessary for your application. That the application it's necessary, I won't even say necessary for, is for people who refuse to buy receivers.
Right. No, I'm pointing you to an X40 400H plus an Outlaw amplifier plus a power sound audio sub. That's the recommendation so far.
So he'd like to stick with a flat panel. In fact, he would like to have one large flat panel plus two smaller cheap flat panels for a bit of sports bar type setup. Mm-hmm. But it looks as though prices jump up significantly above 75 inches. That said, he's coming from a Panasonic Plasma. Ooh. So he wants OLED. As mentioned, gaming is a priority, so he knows the worries about burn-in will get mentioned, but he's never had any issues gaming on his Plasma, so should he consider an OLED? Should he go for a Q8, Q80, or a Q80 Samsung QLED? What do we recommend for his primary display?
I mean, you'd be looking at a 77-inch OLED, which, I mean, granted, they're $7,000 now. That price keeps coming down on the 77-inch OLEDs.
But that's a lot of money.
But yeah, that's a lot of money.
Well, you can spend $2,200 on the Samsung we just talked about.
I wouldn't mind getting him something that's at least full array local dimming. Right. And the Q8/Q80, I mean, that is the value choice because the Q90 is just as expensive as the OLED. And I would, at that point, I would probably get the OLED, to be honest with you. But that Q8/Q80, that is that sort of butter zone of definitely less expensive. You still get the size, you get the full variable refresh rate, and you get the full array local dimming. And the really nice color and the excellent anti-reflective filter and all that. It's, in a way, as expensive as the Q8/Q80 still is, it becomes the value choice of the really excellent flat panels. I guess I would call it that way. I mean, Sony's X900F is up there too, but it doesn't have the full variable refresh rate. That's kind of the thing you're giving up there. The Samsung's giving that.
I am unconvinced that this full variable refresh rate is makes
that
a huge
important
difference for
if you've
casual
ever
gaming.
Seen a single screen tear and it drove you nuts, then that's who this is for.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, unless you're some sort of StarCraft 2 gamer who's like making money doing it, I just don't know.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is if you can afford the 77-inch OLED, I mean, that is the thing that's going to take you from a Panasonic Plasma and go, oh, I got something every bit as what I had and better.
Right.
And if you never had burn-in problems on a Plasma, you will not have burn-in problems on an OLED. The OLEDs are even more robust and harder to burn in than a Plasma was. So you're a careful viewer. You obviously mix up your content and don't set it in torch mode. Otherwise, you would have had a problem with your Plasma. So I think you're fine. The question is just price. If the price of the 77-inch OLED is just too much, I would say that a Samsung Q8/Q80 is the value choice of the excellent displays. So I think those are the right two things to look at. I will say for your smaller screens, make sure they're still 4K HDR capable. Otherwise, are you going to have HDMI problems? So they certainly don't have to be big and expensive, but make sure they are still 4K HDR displays, your littler TVs, because we don't want to run into all the HDMI problems.
Right. Unless you're going to get individual, cable boxes for each one of those.
Each one has its own separate sources.
Which, honestly, I'm kind of for, I mean, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be.
But I mean, if you ever want to be able to switch from one source to a different display, matrix type stuff, then you've got to have them all 4K HDR displays. And I mean, they don't have to be expensive. You can get some TCLs, right?
Yeah, yeah. If it were me, I would be getting TCLs.
Yeah.
I would get a single cable box with an HDMI splitter or whatever to power both of those, and then use either sound bars and just have that be at the bar at the back. Do not hook it into your home theater.
Well, I think he was thinking of the displays all up front, multiple displays, so you can have like 3 games going.
That's fine, but then you'll need a cable box for all 3 of the things, and I would not hook the rest of it into your home theater because it's just like you said, it's just gonna. I think it'd just be easier. So he's considering putting all of his home theater equipment in the area under his stairs and then running conduit from there to any locations necessary. What do we think of that idea? I think that's a great idea. Your speaker wire and all that stuff will be it's fine. Running to your subwoofer locations will be fine. Your only issue will be your HDMI run, which will be significantly longer, which means you're looking at an active HDMI solution. So the monoprice red mirror or the
monoprice fiber optic.
I'd
probably go the monoprice fiber optic, to be honest, just to be safe. Yeah, so that ups your price, but no, definitely do the conduit. That's absolutely right. Go for a pretty big conduit because, monoprice nicely with the fiber optic, they have the version where it has a skinny little HDMI plug that then goes into an adapter to turn it into a full size, so that's easier to pull through a conduit, but it's just to be aware of. HDMI is going to be the thing you're concerned of, and you're close enough even to this back thing behind the stairs that it shouldn't be a problem for your wireless controllers because you're still only 10 feet away, so that should be fine.
Yeah. So he'd always planned on to use drywall in the ceiling, but he's also planning on hard floors, no installed carpet. I guess that's hardwood floors. Anyways, so after listening to us, he realizes he won't have enough absorption. So should he switch to a drop tile ceiling? And if so, which ceiling tiles do we recommend?
It is a compromise to your soundproofing. I'd probably keep the drywall.
I don't see. I would just put a big rug down and I would make a bunch of DIY panels and just evenly space them across my wall. Across all the walls. All of the walls.
You have a pretty high ceiling. You could even do the thing where you actually put like a layer of like a 2-inch layer of insulation across your ceiling and then cover it with fabric.
Yeah, you could do that.
You're
too.
never gonna notice looks wise that anything is amiss, and now you've just made your whole ceiling an absorber. You can do that, or you can put insulation on your walls and cover those with fabric. You can quite easily hide absorption that way. When you're doing full construction like this, it's not that difficult to have 2 inches of absorption with fabric over it.
And a rug between you and your
rug,
and your TV and your front speakers.
Yeah, no, given the compromise to the soundproofing, I would probably keep your plan of the drywall ceiling.
Yeah. What time is it?
I don't know when you have to leave today, so
I don't really have to leave. I am concerned about my son. I'm going to go check on them. But
well, let's try and do 2 hours and see what we can do, because we had 19 on the list and we're only at 9.
Oh well. Matt has accumulated about $750 in Amazon cards, credits, and gift cards. He's in an open concept room using an SVS SB12 NSD sub and an Oculus receiver that only has 2 EQ, which is Audyssey's like we're only going to give you a processor that does this. What can you do for us? They're like, almost nothing.
Not much.
And Oculus said, we'll take it.
That's right. That was the time.
But anyways, this is 2 EQs long dead. They haven't done that in forever. But it's totally satisfactory in every other way for the time being. So I guess
his receiver is.
His receiver is. So he'd either like to upgrade a sub or his receiver, but the only thing he really be getting with the receiver at the moment would be Audyssey Multi QXT32. He can't afford a 3000 series sub, which would seem to be what we'd recommend for his open concept space, but he could get a ported 2000 series to replace his sealed SB12 NSDs. So what do we say you should get? A new sub or a new receiver? Is that really all the options we have? We can't suggest anything else. What about a display? What about
these are the things he's looking to upgrade, and it's either a sub that isn't quite to the level that we would probably recommend, and the 2000 series doesn't have EQ built into it, right? Whereas the 3000 series does. If you got a 3000 series, it has its own EQ that you, because the thing is, 2 EQ is the version of Audyssey that doesn't EQ the bass at all, and the bass is where we want EQ the most. I'm perfectly happy turning EQ off for the higher frequencies, but I want EQ for the bass. Now, you could get EQ built into the sub and get the output you're looking for by, well, not buying now and just saving up until you can get a 3000 series.
Right.
Is that the answer?
I mean, if he's fine with everything he's got right now, I mean, first of all, it seems like replacing the sub seems to be high on this list.
It does. Well, I mean, I could see an SB12 NSD in an open concept space is just getting gobbled up. It's just not performing what he wants.
It is.
And a ported 2000, like a PC 2000, will certainly do better. It'll certainly do better. I mean, I'm more in favor of getting that than the receiver at this point. Because, I mean, if the only thing you're getting the receiver for is room correction... It's not enough. That's not enough.
I know. I can I say none of the above?
I know.
I'm kind of with Rob, and let's just keep saving until we get to the point where we can get a bigger, a properly.
Like,
I mean, I want to know more.
Everything you want, the zero regret purchase.
Right.
Save up for that.
Yeah. All right, we'll do one more at least. Mike wants a new receiver for his family room. He has a full 7.2.4 setup in his dedicated theater, so his family room setup will never be more than 5.1. It's an open concept room using ceiling speakers, and he does want to power a second zone using this receiver. Plus, he wants HEOS so that audio can be sent to a pair of speakers outside. So he definitely wants a denim. He doesn't want to overspend, but he does want 5.1 in the open family room, a powered zone 2, up-to-date HDMI spec, which is everything anyways, and an on-screen display and HEOS. Accessories for Less has a Denon X1400H at a very low price, but would we recommend that model or something else? Does it have all the things?
Yeah, it does have all the things.
I mean, if it has all the things, then it's the cheapest option. I mean, he only really wants 5.1. So
yeah.
The other thing that you'll have to worry about is if you're powering that zone 2, what are you sending to the zone 2?
Mm-hmm.
And you have DACs inside the receiver that will allow you to take your HDMI connection or whatever it is and convert it to 2 point.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was when I looked this morning, the X1400Hs were out of stock and the X2400Hs were in stock for only $20 more.
Yeah, $20. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For some reason, I'm just more comfortable with the X2400H because, I mean, it's got more HDMI inputs. It's got, more amplifier power. This is sort of an open family room space. I'm like, the really skimpy amplifier power in the X1400H makes me a little bit, I'm kind of leaning towards the X2400 because it's in stock. It's only $20 more, and I'm very comfortable with that one. So I don't know. That's the way I lean, Mike.
All right, that's fine. Josh has a small room, 11 by 11 by 8.5. He sits 5.5 feet away from his 55-inch OLED. Finally, somebody sits a proper distance from the 55-inch TV. And he uses a Sony DN1080 receiver to power Klipsch Reference Premier front speakers, and a pair of Klipsch Reference surrounds, and a pair of top middles, and a single SVS PP2000 5.1.2 setup. No one has ever. I mean, there's like no watts were ever used in this.
That's right. More power is just burned in the power supply from inefficiency than watts are sent to these speakers.
The display uses more power than your speakers do.
Absolutely.
PB2000 in an 11 by 11 by 8.5 foot room.
This man has headroom to spare.
What should be his next upgrade? Your room? Room treatments, he doesn't have any. He does have a carpeted floor, it looks like. Yeah. He's got movie posters all over the place.
That's the very first thing he says here. So he's got posters all around. He actually wonders, are they hurting his acoustics?
Well, they create another... I mean, it depends if they're... I mean, what you've got them mounted, or are they behind glass? Because it just gets a hard surface.
Tell from the
you can't tell. It's probably like those.
I mean, you certainly could get printed panels,
right? But they won't be these movie posters that you probably love so much.
Not unless you go against copyright stuff.
Find somebody to break the law for you.
That's right. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say these are like drastically hurting you over just bare walls.
They're high enough to that,
and they're above the ear level.
Yeah, the speaker height level. He's also not sitting right on the back wall. It looks like there might be a speaker
Yeah,
desk
he's got
behind
like
him.
a single seat facing a computer monitor behind his forward-facing seats. Yeah,
And he has carpet in here, so it's not like it's
does.
all whatever. So
I mean, I think you certainly could help a little bit, you know, because I don't think you've got 30% of your surface area covered in absorptive stuff.
well, I'm looking at that front left speaker and the wall. You could to the left, to the right of it, or to the left of it, depending on which direction you're looking at. To its side,
Yes.
the left wall, you could put below where the looks like there's a shelf for movies. You could put a 2x4 panel horizontally.
You sure could.
There, and that would catch your first
And then try to
reflections.
mirror that on the right-hand side if you're able to.
Right, and then behind your head anywhere that you could
Yeah.
would also.
Yeah, I
work.
don't
And
think
then
you have to
behind
go
the TV
overboard
as
here at
well.
all.
Yeah.
But a little bit more.
I'm thinking maybe maybe 4 to 6 panels.
Yeah,
at the most.
agreed.
Yeah. Should he get a second sub? His PP2000 is currently in the middle of his back wall. He could fit a PC2000 in his front left corner. Should he go for that? This is you.
I mean,
This
output-wise,
room.
obviously not.
I don't know. Can the structure of your room even handle that much space?
Oh, it'd be fine.
I mean, you could.
You sure could.
That would be. They would be a fine match. With
I'd
each
want to
other.
know what your uniformity is like at the moment. It
Yeah.
might not be that bad. It might be, but it might not be. I'd want to know. I mean, play some sweeps, sit in each of your seats, and see how uniform or not uniform it is. If it's really not uniform and you care that the
Right.
3 seats are not uniform, well, then you've got to get a second sub because there's no other way to fix this.
Right.
Yeah. But that's really the only way to come at it. Play some sweeps and listen.
So should he upgrade to a 65-inch OLED?
You could.
Could. I mean, you're 5.5 feet away, so that's probably not going to change. 65 inches.
Would give you the 45-degree field of view from that distance.
That's about right for me, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. For my viewing preferences, that's about right for
What
me.
I would say, though, is I wouldn't recommend grabbing a 65-inch OLED right this second. Because I think the current, like, C9 and that, I mean, it's nice. Why not get the one that has the completely future-ready HDMI spec and all that? But I wouldn't get it right now because we know they're going to drop by $1,000 by Black Friday, if not sooner.
Right.
So I would wait till closer to the end of this year and then maybe get yourself a 65-inch OLED. But I wouldn't make that your purchase right now.
So he's heard great things about the larger RP600 speakers?
Yeah.
RP.
Reference Premiere.
Oh, Reference Premiere. The
Still clips.
should he upgrade his front left to right bookshelf speakers?
No.
No.
This one we can be
Jesus.
emphatic on.
Jesus
No.
Christ. Let me just say,
You're
dude,
not even 6 feet away. No. No.
your poor receivers are going. He's like in a dead end job. He's like, I'm not doing anything over here. I barely work. I do nothing. Why did he even buy
I have
me?
more sound coming into me of the speakers acting as microphones than I'm pushing out to them.
Basically, I'm just a filter. That's all I am. Yeah, you do not need.
No,
I
that
mean,
is
if you
not
wanted
your
to
upgrade, sir.
If you wanted to get different speakers, that would be a thing. I mean, Reference Premiere speakers from Klipsch are
They're
fantastic.
nice. They're really good.
Very, very nice. So there's no reason that you should. But if you said, I just want to try something new, then we could make some recommendations. But you certainly don't need to upgrade to
I mean,
more
so
efficient
far
speakers.
we're saying absorption panels we're in favor of. 'Cause
Yes.
that doesn't even have to be super expensive. I mean, that you
No,
can
that's a couple
DIY
$100
that.
bucks.
So
Yeah,
some
couple-
absorption panels we're in favor of. Maybe a second sub, figure out, play some sweeps, but that's it so far.
Yeah. So the AV receiver upgrade, maybe a Denon X4500H. That way he could upgrade to 4 Atmos speakers. So what does he have right now?
He has 2 Atmos speakers right now.
What is it, Denon? Because he's got a Sony receiver.
He's got a Sony that tops out at 7 speakers max.
You could.
I mean, if you're just like, I've got money burning a hole in my pocket, I want to upgrade something. This, I'm going, yeah, I mean, this is an actual feature upgrade, something you literally cannot do with your current equipment.
Right. This is not top of my list of things to.
Sure.
If the option is, first of all, I would do the room treatments
Oh, yes.
right now.
Yes.
I would just do that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
4 or
that's
6
almost
panels.
a no-brainer there, yeah.
That one's pretty easy. I would then save up for the OLED and
Sure.
sit on that for a while. That would be, so far out of the upgrades you've talked about, that's the one that's I think is going to make quality of life difference
Yep.
the best.
I can agree with that.
The subwoofer maybe
Yeah.
You'd have to
listening to the sweeps is free,
test.
so do that, and that'll sort of tell you whether or not.
So lastly, he asks, are his surround speakers too close? The left surround measures 4 feet from his primary seat, and the right surround is a bit farther away at 5 feet from his primary seat, so they use just enough space for a walkway. But, I mean, you wear headphones, right? Are those too close? Basically, no. I mean, the closeness, I mean, your speakers probably think they're too close because they want to play a lot louder than you're letting them. And they're not able to do that because you're so close to speakers that are probably like 91 dB efficient, if not higher. So, they're not too close.
Nope.
They're fine. They're just, you have them placed properly, so you're fine.
Yep, those are fine.
All right, lastly, maybe, PJ, the absorptive cat PJ. If you remember, way back in the day, he sends a picture of his theater, and there was a cat in it. I said something about it being absorbed.
Quite a large, fluffy-looking cat.
Yeah. PJ asked a while back about upgrading his Polk Monitor Series to Polk Monitor Series LCR speakers. The room is 33 by 12 by 8 and 75% cat. And he's sitting about 17 feet away. The speakers will be powered by a Denon X2400H. Rob recommended the HSU HB1 Mark II and HC1 Mark II horn-loaded speakers, but Tom was away that week. So what would Tom recommend? So you need something highly efficient because you're sitting 17 feet away.
17 feet away, yeah.
As far as value, spending the least amount of money to get the most amount of sound quality, the HSUs are, by all accounts, very good speakers. I did not hear the Mark IIs. I heard the Mark Is, and I sort of kind of didn't like them at all.
But that was the Mark Is, and the Mark
That's
IIs
right. I have
were
not heard the Mark IIs, but everybody says they sound good,
Yes.
so I would go with that. You would definitely want to get some sort of very efficient speaker because you're not only are you sitting far away, but you're powering it with not an entry-level receiver, but certainly not a flagship amplifier, that can deal with low impedance and low sensitivity. Klipsch speakers would be great if you could find some that were on sale someplace so that they'd be similar price points. There are other highly efficient speakers as well, some of which I think are fine and some of which I don't understand, like those. Which are the ones that have like the 4 tweeters?
The Tectons.
Tectons. I do not understand those speakers.
They wouldn't be in this price range either anyway.
They're not, but they exist out there. I can get behind the HSUs as a recommendation. I don't know that anything else jumps to mind for 17 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, RBHs are very well known to play loud, and they're reasonably sensitive for the type of speaker that they are.
But you'd need the amplifier power to get them there.
Yeah, you'd have to get an external amp.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if the 2400 has.
It doesn't.
pre-outs.
It doesn't have pre-outs.
So you would have to be upgrading a lot of other things. So I'm okay with HSUs.
All right. Tom does not disagree with Rob on that one.
That's right. This next question is forever long, so we're going to stop. All right. What do we got left?
We have lots left. Hopefully we'll catch up. But we have Brian M. We have somebody named Rob. I forgot the last initial. I didn't put it in there. I think it wasn't in the email. Jeff N. Carlton B. Alex R. Mark R. and Chris K. You're all on the list. We'll answer you next week. Yeah?
Sorry. Yeah.
Are you scrolling? Are you looking at something?
No, I was writing down the name for the podcast.
That'll do.
All right, let's thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Jonathan for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and giving us a PayPal donation. PayPal donation. And our 82 patrons over at patreon.com, including Rob and Carlton.
Yeah, Jonathan, thank you for that one-time PayPal donation. Rob and Carlton, thank you for being patrons, and thanks very much to our 80 other patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up.
We also like to thank Anthony for talking us up to Accessories for Less, I think. Is that where you got
That's
those
right.
from? And Mark for talking us up to SVS.
That's right, Anthony and Mark, thank you very much for talking us up to those retailers, and congrats on your purchases.
If you want your question answered on this podcast, just email us at question@avrant.com. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.